Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show.
Presented by Legacy Precious Metals.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back, folks. Now we are joined by Dr. Robert Redfield, who was the director for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC, under President Donald Trump from 2018 to 2021. He has been in the public health sector as a leader, actively engaged in clinical research and clinical care of chronic human viral infections and infectious diseases for more than 30 years. He also served our country for 20 years in the U.S. Army Medical Corps. And Dr. Redfield met recently with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm very interested in how that meeting went and what is growing out of it. So, Dr. Redfield, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Thanks for having me, Roger. Glad to be here.
So you met with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. As I understand it, you are now moving together, working with President Trump and Senator Vance, as well as Robert Kennedy and Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard and others to make America healthy again. I'm curious to know how your conversation went.
Well, Roger, I think this is really a very, very important initiative. When you look back 2 or 3 decades ago, America was one of the most healthiest nations in the world. And unfortunately now we have well over half of our population has some form of chronic disease. And it really is exciting to me that President Trump and Vance have teamed up with Robert Kennedy to really go after this idea of making America healthy again. Many people didn't understand why so many people who died of COVID actually were people from the United States, even though we have an extraordinary high-quality health system. It's because COVID was a virus that exploited chronic disease. And the reality is probably over 50%, 60%, 70% of the American public has some form of chronic disease. So Kennedy's committed to this. He's passionate about it. I think the president's committed to this. That we can really go now. And I've always said what it really takes to conquer complicated problems is you have to see the possible, and then you have to have somebody that has the courage to lead our nation to act. And I think Trump, Vance, and Kennedy are really going to initiate an
Well, you were out ahead of this. You wrote a piece in June for FoxNews.com on the need for us to focus on the problem of chronic disease as a country. And days later, RFK endorsed the president, which I think has opened the door to a historic partnership. But I could see how people might say to you, well, Dr. Redfield, I mean, Bobby's anti-vaccination, you're pro-vaccination. Isn't this alliance, this partnership unlikely?
You know, it's an important thing you brought up, Roger, because Kennedy's really been maligned by the press and the media and a lot of people that aren't critical thinkers. As you mentioned, I'm very pro-vaccine. I think vaccines are some of the most important gifts of modern-day science to modern medicine. Kennedy, all he really has really advocated for correctly is transparency about vaccines, honesty about vaccines. a balance about vaccines, knowing their benefit and their side effects. So I think, one of the things I hope I do, being a big advocate of vaccines, is get people to open their eyes and realize they really misplayed Kennedy by saying he's anti-vax. He's not anti-vax. He wants honesty about vaccines.
He's always seemed to me to be more interested and focused on not the vaccines themselves, but what some of them seem to include. But the one thing I really think that you and he and the president and J.D. Vance all agree on, that there should be no vaccination mandates. That is, that health freedom is a core element of the Trump message going forward.
Absolutely.
I read his book on Dr. Anthony Fauci, which I found fascinating. I've read many advocates who said that early in the HIV epidemic, that Tony Fauci should have approved some basic drugs that would have dealt with the specific pneumonia that some men who were infected suffered from. It was Bactrim, a relatively inexpensive drug, been around since the 50s, but his failure to do so was an egregious mistake. Your opinion on that?
Well, Roger, you're correct. I was one of the ones very early that in my time at Walter Reed was able to get the Defense Department to diagnose HIV infection in the mid-'80s and assess people's immune function. And if they were immune deficient, prophylax them against pneumocystis pneumonia. That's the key infection at the time. And the way to do that was to use Bactrim. Turns out in the late 70s, a doctor by the name of Hughes down at St. Jude's published a paper that if you took children that had leukemia and you put them on Bactrim, you could prevent them from getting pneumocystis pneumonia, which was a problem. So obviously I took that up, and we did do that in the Defense Department. I'm very proud. In the mid-'80s, we really eliminated pneumocystis. And I am disappointed, because I was on the committee for the FDA that finally improved inhaled pentamidine in 1992. They finally improved that suboptimal treatment. And it took time, 1992, that the Public Health Service endorsed Septra, Bactrim, to treat pneumocystis. And I remember the year we approved inhaled pentamidine, 17,000 people in the United States had died of pneumocystis pneumonia, which was frustrating. And there definitely was, I think, a significant delay in getting those drugs approved to prevent pneumocystis.
In our last interview with Congressman Eric Burleson, he told us that he has co-sponsored a bill with Congressman Gosar of Arizona that would strip vaccination manufacturers of their current legal immunity, and therefore their responsibility from anyone who was damaged by the vaccinations. Now, I know you're not a legislator, you're a doctor, but tell me your opinion on this.
Well, it's a complicated issue, Roger. I mean, I know how this came to pass was, unfortunately, in our country, knowing what I said about vaccines being one of the most important gifts of science and modern medicine, vaccine manufacturers were disappearing because of the long-term liability issue, and that's why Congress stepped in. But I do think this needs to be relooked at, and because clearly the industry has to have some responsibility and ultimately, if necessary, culpability if they're not transparent about what they know about the potential side effects from their vaccines. So it's a complicated issue. I hate to see vaccines go the way of diving boards at the neighborhood swimming pool, which mean they all disappear because of the liability issue. On the other hand, I do think the industry has to be brought to the table to be more transparent and honest about their vaccines, and probably should share liability.
Unfortunately, I myself have only recently been sensitized to what's in the food I eat. I mean, I used to take kind of name brand products for granted. I thought there was only one mayonnaise. Hellmann's mayonnaise. They actually call themselves the real mayonnaise. I really liked Hellmann's mayonnaise. I used to go to barbecues, and if somebody showed up with Kraft mayonnaise, I would bust their chops. Then I started reading the label, and there's a lot of things in here I don't want in my body. And then I started reading the labels on everything. Now, in this past week, we saw some hearings abroad where you would see the exact same, for example, breakfast cereal, but the one sold in the United States has far more additives, while those sold in Europe had far fewer. We got a couple minutes here before we got to go to a break, and we can pick it up on the other side, but we can get started. Why is this the case?
Yeah, I think Kennedy's really an important voice here about what's happened to our nutrition with all of our highly processed foods and all these different chemicals that have been put into foods. The point you brought up, who knows, there's two different types of tricks. Those tricks that my grandkids buy in this country and those tricks that you buy in Canada. The ones in Canada have natural products. They don't have all this highly processed stuff and that stuff. So I think, there's no doubt in my mind that this highly processed food has really led to the epidemic of obesity in the United States, and we need to be addressed. And I think this is something I'm really excited that Kennedy, Trump, and Vance can really look at getting at the causation of some of this chronic disease by going after. I mentioned before that there was a study where people went into a metabolic unit at NIH, and they ate exactly the same thing, same exercise, everything. One of them, though, the food they received was highly processed, and one of them it wasn't processed. And the one that got the highly processed food gained substantial weight during that time. So we've allowed our food supply to really be highly problematic for our health. And it's one of the things that really needs to be addressed as we try to make America healthy again.
Well, unfortunately, I think I've had my last bologna sandwich. Oh, well. We'll be back. We'll be right back with Dr. Robert Redfield, who served as director of the Center for Disease Control from 2018 to 2021 under President Donald Trump. So don't touch that dial.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
This is the Roger Stone Show,
Presented by Legacy Precious Metals.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back, folks. We're still here with Dr. Robert Redfield, who served as the director for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, commonly known as the CDC, under President Donald Trump from 2018 to 2021. Dr. Redfield has been a public health leader in the specific field of chronic human viral infections and infectious diseases for over 30 years. We are talking about the fact that he met recently with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and they found a great deal of common ground, particularly on the issue of the chronic disease crisis that is particularly prevalent among children. And Monday afternoon, Robert Kennedy and Dr. Redfield and many others, including, I'm told, Dr. Phil, are going to be talking about this in Philadelphia. This, I think, is going to be a historic and an important meeting.
Yeah, Roger, I think it's really important. And I think, again, the leadership that President Trump and RFK are putting on this in trying to make America healthy again, this would be sort of a kickoff of that initiative, because one of the important chronic diseases that we have in this nation that many people underestimate its impact is, of course, addiction. And so on Monday, we're really going to try to address addiction. I try to remind people, addiction for what it is. It's a chronic medical condition. It's a condition. And I think Kennedy has a deep commitment there. It's a personal issue for me. I mean, I spent over 20 years practicing medicine in inner city Baltimore, running large AIDS programs for over thousands of people, where I had many of my patients had suffered from addiction. So I thought I understood it pretty well. I was chairman of medicine at one of the hospitals, and I had a major division of addiction. But I can tell you, Roger, I had no concept of addiction and its impact until it came in my own family. And one of my 6 children, unfortunately, almost died from a fentanyl overdose that he got by accident with contaminated cocaine, and then recognized that he had a drug use disorder problem that we needed to address. And he showed great courage eventually and stepped up and entered treatment. He was fortunate enough to get into a program that actually worked, spent 14 months in recovery, and now he's 8 years in recovery. And it's by the grace of God. So Kennedy and I have a deep commitment to this issue of addiction. I know the president does too. And it's sort of a first step into chronic disease. I'm
praying for your son on that long road to recovery. And through the grace of God, sounds like he's doing very well. I'm perplexed about something I've never understood, and that is an illegal drug, fentanyl. Does fentanyl have any illegal but theoretically recreational use? I mean, why would anyone take any fentanyl, never mind too much fentanyl?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a recreational drug in a sense, in its side effects, very similar to the consequences, for example, of heroin and opioids. So it's sort of used to give people an artificial high. It really, we need to get rid of it. We need to have a much more serious approach to eliminating fentanyl use in this nation. It's a very dangerous drug. Obviously, we know. When I became CDC director, I thought I was, be an infectious disease doctor. I'd help CDC deal with infectious diseases. And the very first epidemic that I was asked to take on was drug use disorder. President Trump was very committed to it. He put a lot of new money to try to deal with it. When I got down to Atlanta, I found out, to my surprise, that 80,000 young Americans had died of drug overdose that year. And now we're up over 100,000, 110,000, 120,000. It's enormous when you think of the impact on our culture that drug use disorder is causing. It's definitely addressable. When my son needed to be treated, and I'm a very connected doctor, I had to look for programs and try to figure out which ones worked and which ones didn't. So many of the programs that we have that were available to people just didn't work. You couldn't find out if they worked or didn't work. You couldn't find out their success rates. So we searched hard and wide, and we found a program that actually worked in Texas. I mean, he's got one of the things he's going to talk about in Philadelphia is sort of a plan that he's been working on in developing these treatment communities. And we need to have treatment programs available to all of Americans that are struggling with it. And we need to have, that work. And those programs that don't work, we need to shut them down. And those programs that do work, we need to amplify them. Drug addiction is a treatable medical condition, okay? And it frustrates me. I have two children that were doctors. When my son went into treatment, they both told me I had to get ready for my son failing, going back to drugs, because that was the rule. And I argued with them. But unfortunately, they were right, the way treatment programs were at the time. But we were able to get my son into the treatment program. And as I said, he's now in his 8th year of recovery. And recovery should be the rule, not the exception.
I appreciate your joining us today and talking about this incredible crusade. There's been a lot of focus, obviously, on the issue of chronic disease, but Robert Kennedy proposes to reexamine the manner in which we approve drugs and market drugs. I think that's equally appropriate. I'm really glad to see that you have allied yourself with Robert Kennedy and many others in the health freedom movement. You have a respected voice. Let me ask you a question. Have some of your colleagues looked askance at your new association with Robert Kennedy?
The people that I know that are not medical and scientific, I think have been, very positive and supportive of what I'm doing, and glad that I've lent my voice to it. But I will say my public health colleagues and my scientific colleagues have not been kind. They unfortunately, again, I don't know why, they just haven't been objective in really looking at and understanding. I learned a long time ago not to form an opinion about somebody that I haven't had an opportunity to meet and talk to face on. I don't want my opinion to be defined by some TV show. And I will tell you, Kennedy's rock solid. He's going to be a great advocate for President Trump in making America healthy again. And it's an honor for me to contribute in any way I can to help him to accomplish that.
All right. Well, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. I want to thank Dr. Robert Redfield, the former director of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention under President Donald Trump, for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.